listening to the Dean Lampton Show. My name is Joey, and I'm joined by Paul.
All right, mate.
And by Neil.
Hello.
It's the classic lineup, and I'm sure, especially you, Neil, have been very, very missed. Is this your first appearance of the season, Neil?
No. Just I've done I don't know. Actually, when did the season start again? Remind me.
I don't know. It's very, very difficult to.
I've done one this season. I'm pretty sure. I've done something. I spoke on this, surely.
I think so. Right. Moments of the week. Paul, you sounded confident beforehand that you've got one. So why don't we start with you?
It was on Friday, seeing everyone in their brand new spanking Cov shirts on Twitter, and then be like, "Ooh, mine might be coming today." Ooh, and then it didn't. And then today, no. Then on Friday, Jane was like, "Oh, there's something here that someone will be excited about." It's like, "Yes!" And it was a letter to Mary, and it's like, "Oh, for God's sake." And then today, sort of went downstairs in the porch. There was a package, and it's like, "At last!" And that was for something for Mary. So I'm sat here in 3 years ago's third shirt at the moment, desperately longing for this season's home shirt. Like some.
Paul,
sad...
do you wear the shirt when we do the pod?
To be honest, no, not always. I do mainly wear Cov shirts because I'm at that age now and I don't leave the house. But I went for very long story short, my daughter goes for a ballet lesson, which is about 45 minutes long, and I'm trying to go on runs during that 45 minutes. So normally I wear the third shirt to go on my runs, but today, because it was quite dark, I decided to wear last season's away shirt, got home, had a shower, and then wanted a relaxing shirt on, so I put the third shirt on from a couple of years ago.
Real rotation on the go there. I like it.
Yeah, I sort of decided I put two older home shirts in the loft to make space for the new home shirt.
Firstly, which one's got relegated?
Just it's oldest always get relegated. So basically, the only ones in circulation now are the third shirt, which I basically wear all the time because it's really comfy. The Nike one, the green and black stripe one, and then I've got last season's home and away shirt in current circulation. The away shirt will stay out for longer. The home shirt will probably have another year, then now go in the loft.
Neil, how do you control your Cov shirt distribution?
I don't have that many. I've got to be honest with you. I got rid of a load for ages ago. But back when I didn't realise that the 90s was ever going to be vintage. So I got rid of a load. Also, I realised the other day that I lost my 2001-2002 John Eustace number 15 shirt, which I'm gutted about because he was the best. But yeah, I don't have too many. So my rotation is very much I might put on one if I'm going for a run, and usually that would be the Joe Cole one. Okay. I've got the yellow one, never worn it. I love it. Just look at it all the time. Never worn it.
Is that the only one of the three that you've got from last season?
Yeah, I only got the yellow one. I think that was Defiance more than anything else. I was like, well, it's that good and nobody else is talking about it. So I'm only going to buy that one. Plus a bit stingy as well.
Are you a member? Are you going to get the member shirt?
You put me on the spot here. Does that make me a bastard if I'm not a member?
No, not
just
at all. No.
Check.
To be honest, part of the fan base, it makes you a bastard if you are, and it makes you a bastard if you aren't to another half of the fan base. So whichever way you look at it, you're a bastard.
Why can't people just be allowed to get on with their own lives?
I forgot about football.
Yeah. And as well, presumably you're paying for iFollow games and stuff like that, and that you...
Yeah, exactly. I'm paying loads. Shitloads of cash this year.
Does that mean that every Cov fan that ain't got two fucking pennies to rub together is a dickhead as well, like not a real fan? Who's the arbiter of these things?
The arbiter of the people who are really annoyed on Twitter about things. That's how the arbiter of social mobility works these days.
I wasn't sure if I just created that though. That discourse, like maybe people are just totally fine with it. I just sort of mentioned it I'm pretty defensive most of the times. I thought just in case I am, but actually I've been busy. Yeah, I didn't have time to support my club this year.
You didn't let me finish my sentence. Actually, I was saying, who is the arbiter in these things? It's me. Actually, you are shit for.
They should let you finish that actually.
Yeah. Neil, moment of the week.
I'm torn between two different things. One didn't happen this week, but it made me laugh and was an eye-opener. One did happen this week, but I'm gonna go. The one that did happen this week was the sending off, so I'll just leave that. We'll talk about that in the actual match report. The one I'm going to go for is against Barnsley. The weird thing about this season is, obviously, we're all seeing the games now through iFollow, but we all get the Clive commentary. And for years and years, Clive has had his commentary and it's just being exposed to people on the radio, so he can get things wrong all the time, which he does. What I find quite funny now is that he gets everything wrong still, but there's a whole audience of people who now recognise just how much he does get wrong, which, bless him, he's trying his hardest. I haven't got a problem. But I thought that the funniest one was Ostergaard's header, which hit the bar, which
brilliant.
Him and Oggy continued throughout the entire course of the game to say was McFadzean, which was just like, if you're listening to that on the radio, the way they went on about it, you're like, okay, he's his great, McFadzean's flying in, he's his real sort of rocket from every corner. And then the other one was where they just sort of made up that Godden got booked for dissent, which was just okay, yeah, fine, that's happened as well. But I think my moment, it was just basically the whole exposure of, the fact that Clive, he used to get away with being on the radio, now has a whole audience of people picking up on it, which is, to me, quite amusing.
It's excellent. And of course, he was highlighted by Accidental Partridge as well, wasn't he? In a clip that's been picked up quite significantly. Yeah, it's funny to know. Sometimes you think that, kind of, because he's what's there, and you might be inclined to find something funny anyway, is that you think, well, that's just, funny. It is nice to know that on a very national level, it's also hilarious that anyone that would come across him would find him reason to. And we've done this before, haven't we? We're not having a go at the guy, because I think he does a really good job, but that he's indicative of a certain type of buttoned up white middle classness, isn't he? That is in itself inherently very funny.
I just find it funny how he's got that sort of that Clive thing that got picked up by Accidental Partridge was so sort of Ron Burgundy, like just read whatever is put in front of him. And what was that time where you just kept sending in tweets to him?
Yeah, him and Winchy.
Like, he was literally reading anything you said. It was just
because they were so bereft of content that I worked out they were reading literally any text or tweet that was sent. So I would just send them stuff that was just completely nonsense, and it was Winchy that would just read it out and then have to try and swiftly, would try and swiftly move on, because they tended to be like weekday games where there was low engagement, like there wasn't many fans in the ground, let alone people like listening on CWR or whatever. And so they were. I've had people get in touch with us and say that in the darker days that they had been proactively contacting people either on Twitter or by text to suggest that they rang or texted him.
Oh God! That's a.
I remember. I'm not going to reveal any names because they came through in DMs, and I don't know whether it was. People who've got in touch with us before and said they've had like phishing texts that have been like, anything you want to say about the game today, buddy?
Give us a call.
Yeah, so that was good. My moment of the week, I'm going to go for Dom Hyam.
Nice.
So we've talked about kind of. We talked about players stepping up, and I think we're going to go on to talk about probably ad nauseum how we did against Bournemouth, what the context of all of that is, etc., etc., etc. But I thought that there was a few moments on Friday where I thought, go on, Dom Hyam, actually, you look like you're really going to step up again. Which is just, I know we've talked about this a lot, but I always think about one of the few times that we've all been in the same room together was when he came in with Ryan Haynes.
Yes, little lad.
Yeah, before Notts County at home when Jody Jones scored and we won 1-0. Start of the League 2 season. And he was just a baby, just like a total baby. And now you look at him and you think, well, you're only, 23? And actually, I thought he held himself really well in that game, largely. And you think, what if you can do the same as you did in League One, where if we're lucky enough to survive, or we are good enough to survive this season, and then we kick on next season, I wonder how far he can go.
He doesn't seem flustered, does he? Ever. He's always playing. I mean, he's not perfect, but yeah, I found, especially in the game on Friday, where he was just a very, very sturdy performance, always kind of reading it well. And whereas there was a lot of kind of sloppiness and kind of almost scaredy cat kind of behaviour from some of our players, it just kind of felt like he was doing what he always does, which is just play his game. And it's going to be really interesting to see how he gets on this year.
And that was the main thing, wasn't it? He just did the basics to a high level. He didn't do anything above what he can normally do. which is why he looked like he had done in every other game he's played for us probably for the last 18 months, where some of them seem overawed or were trying things they wouldn't normally do. He just looked at ease. And you look at his passing, I mean, I think he played...
There's one ball in the first half that was remarkable, weren't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, he only Ben Sheaf and Hammer made more passes than he did. And then I think against Barnsley, again, he was one of the highest passing players. Against Barnsley, he played 71 passes. Like Hammer only did 55, Sheaf did 34. You know, a lot goes through him, which is why he passes the ball so much. But he doesn't waste it. It's not, you know, on Friday, it was 85% pass completion rate with 46 passes.
Against a team that pressed really heavily, didn't they?
Yeah.
They gave him every opportunity to waste the ball.
Yeah, and that, I mean, McFadson's pass completion rate was 93%, but from half the amount of passes. So those, I mean, for all of what's been going on, I don't think you can really criticise any of the back. I know Ostergaard probably didn't have his best game against Bournemouth. I think the booking didn't help, but I don't think those three are particularly an issue, are they? I think they've basically carried on from where they were last season, which is, you know, McFadden has his moments, but from what I understand, he was brilliant against Barnsley, and he was, you know, I don't think anyone's pointing any fingers at him against Bournemouth either, are they?
Well, picking that up from there, Neil, would you consider him brilliant against Barnsley?
I don't think I've ever considered McFadden brilliant, but I think I do take Paul's point on that. Yeah, like I think of the players who have been noticeable this season in the Championship and felt like, okay, they'll be capable this year. He's one of them who doesn't seem overawed by it. He's still, you know, he's still him, and he makes some wally brain decisions every now and again. But I think he has stepped up to that kind of that leader performance level that we kind of want from him. So, you know, I do agree with Paul's point. And against Barnsley, it wasn't a great game, and you know we were kind of teed up for Barnsley beforehand as being this really great out of possession team, and their fans will have you believe that if they could actually score some goals, they'd be going up this year because their work rate off the ball is incredible. And by and large, that made a lot of sense when you watch the match. You know, they are relentless. They keep going, they keep pressing, and with people like Thomas in there who did the same when he was with us. Really, you know, he kept pushing and he kept making life difficult for our defenders. And the stark difference I see this year versus last year is how more difficult it is for us to kind of dictate the game or control the game, and do that thing that we've always wanted to do last year, which was bring the ball out from defence, you know, start from Morosi to one of the central defenders and try and bring it out in that manner. Barnsley, it was far harder to do that. I mean, I didn't feel totally threatened by them during the game, but I could see why people looked at them and said, okay, they're quite a difficult opponent. And you know, we played the same formation as we have for a while. Sheaf came in. I have to confess, a really irrational intro to Sheaf, in the sense where I'm still not sure what I think of him, and I don't know, for some reason I don't know what he's about yet. So I mean, and the Barnsley performance was kind of, he did okay. Again, he's not doing anything that's putting me off majorly, but I just think I'm so used to what happened at our midfield last year when we had Kelly and Walsh looking so kind of dynamic together and really seeming to work, and then this year you've got Hammer and then you've got Sheaf together, and I just want the same level of kind of dynamism in the middle. And Sheaf isn't giving me that
just quickly
as
on
yet,
Sheaf,
and I didn't.
yeah.
Go on.
So I feel the same, and I feel like I've been missold ever so slightly, because I thought that what he was 60% sort of ball playing defensive midfielder, but still 40% sort of defensive enforcer. And I haven't seen that at all yet, really, and that might be him adapting or whatever. But I thought that he and Kelly might have been much more like for like, whereas actually I've not seen a huge amount of bite to him. Have you?
No, I don't. I think you're totally right there. We don't have that from him. So look, you've got Hamer who's got that, and then quite a bit more. He's doing his own little thing. But yeah, to be honest, I don't see the other side of it yet either. So I was expecting quite a classy. That's out of order. He's still classy. I was expecting, sort of that really
I know
kind
exactly what you mean. Yeah.
the passing, that the intricate passing, the guy who can thread the ball through. Somebody who is going to really dictate the game. And he's probably just, he's just getting into the season. It's a few games in. He's neat and tidy, and that's it at the moment. So it makes it difficult for me to kind of pick exactly what he is and whether I think he's the man for that role or not just yet. But I think, I don't want to hone in on him, but the Barnsley performance was another one where I kind of felt like there was an opportunity for him to really kind of do something in that match, and he kind of went through the neat and tidy motions, which maybe that's what we've got him in for. I don't know, but for some reason I felt I feel like we should have more from this kid from the Arsenal Academy. I always expect someone to come from the Arsenal Academy to be supreme, but a couple of games in, I'm not gonna kill him for it.
Like all of the other ones we've had, like Chuba Akpom and
well, we really have set the bar,
Henderson.
I mean, my issue with Sheaf is very much on the same round, really. Without wanting to look forward to the Bournemouth game, one of my concerns with him is he was very passive and also took the really easy option. And at one point, Ryan Johns' Wolves had the ball on the left wing.
You're still going with that?
I'm still going with that. I'm going with that forever now. He passed the ball back to Sheaf, and Sheaf had time and he had options, and he went back to Hyam, who was then, because of the way that Bournemouth were pressing, was suddenly under pressure. He passed it along into the middle to McFadden, who was then under pressure. And I think that sort of run of play ended up with Hyam clearing the ball off the line. And it all came from Sheaf having lots of options, but just the easiest one is just 5 yards back to Hyam. And I think, again, what you were saying is bang on. It's the difference between League One and the Championship. In League One, the outball was your defence because they don't have players who are going to put you under as much pressure. So your defenders have lots of time on the ball. So you can rebuild a lot easier. The problem is against Bournemouth is one of Bournemouth's key plans, and from what I understand was the same against Barnsley, is as soon as the ball went to one of our defenders, they were under pressure and their outball was marked. So that it wasn't a case of it was easy for Hyam to then have other options. Hyam naturally looked for centre-backs do look for an easy option as a pass. So he looked for McFadden, and it all came from Sheaf just not being, and it might come with time, but it just felt to me at that point it was like you could have done quite a few other things, but you went for like the most passive ball you could do. You could have carried the ball 5 yards forward, and I think that's what we're missing from the Kelly and Walsh partnership. Is they set the tone for the team because they would carry the ball forward, and they would actually push us forward, and they'd push the wing backs forward. And my worry with Sheaf and Hammer is they're quite happy to get the ball and move it, which is fine. But then the whole team starts from 20 yards further back, and I don't think that's going to help us.
Yeah, I agree, and I think also then you move forward into kind of the attacking formation as well, where it can, especially against these Championship teams, can feel a bit sparse up there when you've only got Gordon really, and if we're kind of bypassing them, or we're just going for a ball or kind of a Hail Mary ball and that sort of thing, where it's just kind of a loop around the corner. I just think, and it could just be that we are now Championship and things are going to be more difficult. And the other thing that I realised finally this week, having watched the Bournemouth game, was just, okay, I'm going to have to get used to the fact that we're not going to be superior every single match, whereas last year it was just, we were the best team, and it's unusual because it took a long time for me to get used to that frame of reference. But then obviously you get so used to winning and so used to being the best team and just expecting us to do what we did so well. This year it's probably most likely going to be quite different. And we've had, I think, every game this season we've had periods. We've had either a good half or we've had a good portion of play, but we've also had quite sticky periods as well, whether that's a poor first half against the QPR or I thought the second half against Barnsley, we kind of fell apart again then as well. Really didn't look that sturdy. But yeah, I mean, just Barnsley was 0-0. I don't think there's much more detail you can go into it. We had a good chance from the corner where Ostergaard, not McFadden, had the header, a rocket of a header against the bar. He's looking a threat from set pieces. And the other thing, one of the big positives so far this season has been those set pieces. Just the fact that we do seem a genuine threat, and whether it's the ball, he's never too sure. He doesn't seem like he's doing anything particularly special with it, or whether it's just a bit more kind of commitment or force from the people attacking it. I'm not sure, but I do genuinely look forward to our corners now. I'm looking at them thinking, yeah, okay, we've got a chance to actually do something here. Whereas for last year, I never really felt like it was a thing. We never really had a decent delivery or kind of something you could believe in. So that was a positive. But then it just kind of, second half against Barnsley, I just felt like we lost our kind of any sort of attacking thrust, really. It was kind of, we were going through the motions a little bit. He made a couple of changes on 69 minutes, like Shipley and Walker came on to try and kind of adjust the dynamic a little bit. And then obviously you put Walker up there, who is another player who I'm just still trying to work out who he is, what makes him special. And I think the one thing with our strikers this season is that we miss kind of, most strikers have like an individual attribute that you can point to and say, okay, this is what they're about. But with Walker and Godden particularly, if you ignore the fact that they're probably good finishers, well, they are good finishers, it's hard to, they're not particularly quick. They don't seem to be particularly kind of dominant in the air. And it's like, are they both just the same kind of player who you just need to give them a chance and then they'll put it away? But then you sort of think, well, we're playing or essentially one up front, and then we're desperately trying to get the ball up to them. I think you do wonder whether we need a little bit more up there, whether it's two up there or somebody with a bit more about them, which seems mad to say when Godden's got 3 goals. But, we've got to call these things out, and, what's for the best of the team moving forward, how are we going to get the most points this season? You sort of think, well, is this current formation enough for us in every single game? It can work, but the Barnsley performance was another one where I kind of felt there was just an element of isolation up top with kind of Godden, and then Walker came on and he did a few nice things in terms of he got his foot on the board, he laid it off, but he's still early days with him, and I just can't figure him out just yet. And yeah, by the end of it, I kind of looked like Barnsley were the ones who, if they created a chance, they may have scored. They don't look very clinical, and they had a couple of chances, and I think it was Woodrow right at the end where he probably should have scored. He just kind of laced it straight through to Morosi, and that was that, really. There was nothing too special about the game. It was all a bit drab. Two teams seemingly happy for the point, it felt like. And we got ourselves a point. We moved up to 13th in the league, which is lovely. I'll take 13th right now. Thanks very much. And then, that was the game that was.
I don't want to get too stat heavy, but quite interesting. I thought I'd have a quick look. Against Barnsley, Matt Godden had 21 touches in the entire game, and he was on for 90 minutes. Walker was only on for 21 minutes, and he did 14 touches, which I think is sort of whether or not that's interesting. He's up to, but it's like he obviously had more touches or was on for a lot more touches. But the interesting thing is Callum O'Hare, out of our attacking players, he had 60 touches compared to Allen had 24, Godden had 21. It's O'Hare, and you go forward to the Bournemouth game, and again, Godden had 23 touches. Well, when you think he kicked off 4 times and he took a penalty and he won 4 area challenges, suddenly that 23 becomes 12 or something, touches potentially with his feet in the game. And that's not me having a go at Godden. That's an issue the team has, where your main striker potentially is only touching the ball 12 times with his feet in 90 minutes. That is our issue, isn't it? And by the sounds, it was the same against Barnsley. It's how do we get that front three, the support? And I think last season, that support came from Walsh, came from Kelly, it came from Dabo, it came from McCallum.
Shipley, Westbrook.
Shipley. Yeah, but Shipley was part of that front three, wasn't he?
Yeah, but you're right, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. It's sort of how do we get that front three? And I was thinking about this earlier. It's like last season, our back 5 or 7, if you include the 2 defensive midfielders, was the launch pad of our team. They were incredibly solid, but also the front 3 were basically there to finish off games. They weren't there to get us on top in games, because the way we got on top was the fact that Walsh and Kelly controlled the midfield. And that's what you were saying earlier. Is basically it was that control that we had, and that control came from the fact that we could pass the ball back into our defence. They were comfortable with it. They could move it around. This season already, and someone's asked. So I know we're just jumping forward to the Bournemouth game, but I don't think we need to discuss the Barnsley one. Ferguson's beard on Twitter said, "Is the Bournemouth thrashing really that relevant to our Championship season?" And the answer to that is yes, and indeed no. Obviously, we're going to lose games. And obviously, we're going to lose against games. We're going to lose against teams who are considerably better than us. And everyone seems to be agreeing that Bournemouth are considerably better than us.
Do you disagree with
how?
that, Paul?
Come?
Do you disagree with that, I should say?
No, I don't disagree with that. But I think that you can't just say we lost that game because they were far better footballers than us, because that only tells you half the story. The other half of the story is a story that we'd already talked about previously on this. And that is, how do we go from being completely under pressure to relieving that pressure? How do we get the front 3 involved in the game? But not only involved in the game, but they can actually bring the rest of the team forward. And we go back to the QPR game, which is the only other game I've seen for 90 minutes. For the first 40 minutes, we couldn't clear our lines. We couldn't hold the ball up front. And then Ryan Giles got the ball on the left wing. He scampered forward, put in the cross, and we equalised. And QPR just were baffled by that. And Bournemouth were very much the same. They dominated for 40 minutes, absolutely dominated. We couldn't get the ball, but when we could get the ball, we had no outlet. Because I love Callum O'Hare. I think he's really adapted really well to the Championship. But ultimately, he wants to get the ball and he wants to dribble and he wants to move with it. He doesn't want to hold it up. He doesn't want to look backwards. He doesn't want to control the ball and sort of let people join him. He wants to scamper off. And unfortunately for Shipley, he's looking a bit out of his depth. And I don't want to say that because that sounds really cruel. And I do like Shipley. But again, if you think to his best pals in the Cov shirt, were pretty much early last season when we were playing 4-3-3. And he kept releasing Jordi Huula and players like that. That's what he needs, runners in front of him. And when he gets the ball and looks up, the only runner he's got is Godden, who's, as Neil said, isn't particularly quick. He's not really an out-of-box type of player. So you look at Shipley and you look at the options he's got, and you're thinking he doesn't really have any. His options are all behind him, but they're not just behind him. They're 20 yards behind him. So if he's going to play the ball to Hamer or Sheaf, he's got to go back 10 yards. That's not what he wants to be doing. Shipley wants to be making things happen going forwards, but he's isolated because we're basically defending with 7 players, and when we do relieve pressure, we're only attacking with 3. So how do we get those 3 involved? Now, is it a case of those 3 just aren't good enough, or only O'Hare's good enough, so we look at the other 2 but keep the same system? Or do we change the system and bring in Walker up front to play alongside Godden, or even Bakayoko?
I knew that. I was just waiting for his name. I
Well,
nearly had a stopwatch waiting to see how long it takes.
He's not put Biamu on the bench, I don't think, in the league yet. So obviously he's not thinking that Biamu's Championship ready. So if you look at the options he's got, he's only really gone for Bakayoko on the bench. I'm a bit unsure how we resolve this problem, because Godden has got 3 goals. On Friday, if he hadn't have taken that penalty, he'd have done nothing for 90 minutes. And I'm not sure how much that is his fault or the system's fault. But the reality is, he didn't do anything. He didn't hold the ball up. He didn't take relief pressure. He's not putting the opposition's defence under any pressure. So he's basically just on Friday. He was waiting for the penalty, and he took it away. It was a brilliant penalty. But can we survive with it's one of those things. It's, can we survive with a guy who's at the moment scoring 1 in 2, but the rest of the time he doesn't do anything? Or do we help him out? So it might be a case of we keep him in, but we bring Walker in and we change our system. That might be the way that we sort of can carry Godden at times, but he's there for the opportunity which arises. I'm not sure how we square that circle at the moment, but if you take that into the context against Bournemouth, it was basically attack v defence, and Bournemouth would just, what they did at QPR couldn't do is they just carried on doing it until they scored, and we cleared the ball off the line twice, 3 times. It could have been even more emphatic than it was. One of my other issues against Bournemouth is I don't think many of our players raise their games.
Yeah.
And you've got to. I'm sorry. This whole their team cost £100 million. It's like, don't give a shit. Because if you play at your absolute best and you give it your absolute all and you get beat 3-1, I will not complain. I will be, that's fine. You did your best. You raised your game. You knew it was going to be a hard match and you absolutely gave 100. I'm not saying that people weren't trying. It's just, it was sloppy. It was almost like, oh, well, they're better than us because they played in the Premier League last season. And it's like, well, if you're going to do that, don't bother turning up against Bournemouth in the next game. Don't bother turning up against Watford when we play them twice. Don't bother turning up against Norwich because they were in the Premier League last season. Brentford, who
why have
play
you got
next.
to be so superlative about it? Surely you realise that people on the other end of it aren't saying, oh, it's fine to get beat by Bournemouth and don't ever turn up. Like, surely you can be more centrist about reacting to people who feel like that.
If
They're
it's
not.
a
So that's
case
not
of
what people are saying. I don't think, is it?
No, the thing is, I can if you can accept the fact that we weren't just beat because they cost £100 million. We were beat because we didn't play at our best, nowhere near our best.
But I would agree with that too. Yeah.
No one's saying that. Everyone's just going, well, they cost £100 million. Of course we were going to lose. But that's not what it's about, is it?
But I think some people can say some things and allow it to be part of what they think. You don't have to say every bit of what you think all in one go.
No, I accept that. But what I'm saying is the fact that the Bournemouth result, Bournemouth are a good side. We knew that before we went into that game. We knew that. So you then, you make sure you're fucking hard to beat. And we weren't. We weren't hard to beat. Bournemouth could have won 6-1 and it wouldn't have flattered them at all.
Do you think Liverpool should have tried to have been more hard to beat?
But you can sort of, okay, yeah, they should have been. And the Liverpool players have come out and said they were embarrassed by their performance. It's like, we didn't play well. Unless you're arguing the fact that we did play well. Or you're saying that people did.
I think you're running too far to the other side of the ship.
No.
I think you're assuming that people saying that there was no shame in being beaten by that Bournemouth side think that somehow it was a glorious defeat where we couldn't have done anything more. And I think actually what people were saying was actually we played. So what I'll tell you what I was saying when I said it. I thought Bournemouth looked like a decent team. I thought, on a side note, I thought Dominic Solanke didn't look like £20 million worth of striker. Did anyone else think that actually, ironically, probably the most expensive player on the pitch looked like the least expensive player? But aside from that, I thought Lerma was magnificent the entire game, every single bit of it. And I thought there was a nice parallel to be drawn between Hamer, who we are calling God at the minute. I thought he got outshone quite comprehensively by Lerma, and I think it was a bit of a wake-up call for sort of those relative merits. And I thought that was indicative of, generally speaking, the quality on show. Could we have done more? Could we have adapted our game? Could we have done this? Could we have done that? Possibly. Was it also difficult because you don't know whether there are relative kind of advantages or disadvantages to the way that a team finishing the season a month ago and a team finishing the season 5 months ago might have come up against each other. And that's not necessarily saying for all teams in those circumstances. Perhaps on that day it was difficult. I find it difficult at the minute to draw lots of very meaningful conclusions from anything that's happening. But I can occasionally go, well, I don't know. I don't feel too bad about losing that game. But it doesn't mean that I felt like we couldn't have done more or that circumstances could have been different. And you seem very cross about the fact that people didn't mind losing that game. Right.
I'm very cross at the fact that people are just writing it off as like it was inevitable because they cost £100 million.
But is anyone saying that?
No, sorry. And I think there is also a sort of thing of people were criticising people for being disappointed that we lost that game. And I think you can be legitimately disappointed. Not the fact we lost, because sometimes you just lose. And if you remember, we once walked out of a Tranmere game when they beat us 5-1.
5-1, yeah.
Giggling because we were nowhere near. It was just a farcical game.
Yeah.
So that's not saying that I cannot be angry by a defeat. I can be sort of sanguine about a defeat. What I can't be sanguine about is a performance where I don't think people did themselves justice. And that's where I was on Friday. I don't think enough players did themselves justice. I don't think enough players can come off and said, yeah, I actually gave that my best shot. And I think that's what annoys me, is the fact that all the fans as well, it's like, oh, they're going to beat us. And it's like, yeah, they were, but we could have made it damn hard for them to beat us. We could have made it really difficult for them to beat us. We could have made it really hard and they could have snuck a 1-0 win. In fact, 3-1 was probably the least we could have got away with. And sorry, go on.
Sorry, I just know because the point you just made there about like making it damn hard, and I think the daft thing for me is I didn't have it down as us not working. I think that the reason why we made it easy for them was purely down to a quality perspective. I just thought that we gave the ball away a lot. We made mistakes which we didn't make last year a lot. I didn't see. I don't know if this is the point that you're making, but are you talking about effort here? Are you talking about just sheer determination to get a result? Is that what you felt like you missed? Because
I think
my frustration was more of the quality that we seem to lack and the mistakes we kept making.
I think if you look at the second and third goals, they're really easy goals. Like they basically just walk from midfield.
We were shapeless. That's
the first especially is bad. Yeah, there's no.
And we played with 7 defensive players, and as I said, that wasn't the first time. Like they could have been 3-4-0 up at half time. And that was, for me, it's like, if you're playing with 7 defensive players, you make sure that they don't get shots away, that you make it hard. If they've got a pass to make, they're under pressure, especially in your half, especially near your box. You work and you close down all the angles, you close down all the space, and you make it difficult. And I don't think Bournemouth were particularly stretched. I don't think the game was made difficult enough for them. And that's what disappointed me. Yeah, I think we were sloppy. And I think we were, maybe it was the culture shock some of our players needed after after we beat QPR. But yep. I said QPR did exactly the same for 40 minutes. The fact is they just didn't have that extra bit of quality which Bournemouth have, which I accept. Not every team in the divisions can have the extra bit of quality that Bournemouth have. But the issue we had in the first 45 minutes in not being able to clear our lines, not being able to get higher up the pitch, not being able to get into positions where we were hurting the opposition, were the issues that, from what I understand, was exactly the same against Barnsley. Again, fortunately, Barnsley didn't have the quality to finish it off. But I think we all know that Barnsley could be one of the teams that struggle this season. Now, our next couple of games are against teams who probably will be able to finish it off, because we've got teams like Brentford, Swansea, Blackburn, Middlesbrough. And we're gonna have to raise our game. We're gonna have to be hard to beat in those matches, because they're exactly the same as Bournemouth. They've got that little bit of quality, especially in the final third. So we can't rely on the fact that we're just well organised. You've got to make it hard. And we were quite passive. If I was going to describe the performance in one word, it'd be passive. We were just, when we got on the ball, we were either looking for the easy option, or we weren't sort of putting our personality on the pitch. And it's like, one of my issues with Sheaf so far is, you say, I don't know what his personality is. There's no, like, you watch Walsh, and Walsh annoyed me at the start of last season, but you knew what he was trying to achieve. You knew what was in his head. And it is a step up from the Championship into the Championship. And one of the big thoughts that was going through my head earlier is, the back five's easy because you know the leader in the back five. We've probably got 3 in McFadden, Rose and Hyam. You know that they're talking, they're bossing it. They're all sort of ready for it. You look in the midfield 5, the attacking 5. You look at Sheaf, Hammer, O'Hare, Shipley or Allen and Godden. And I don't see a leader there. I don't see a Leon Clark. I don't see a Doyle or a Kelly. I see five people, and it's no disrespect to them. They're all trying to find their feet in the Championship for the first time, which was one of our concerns at the start of the season. I don't see someone putting their foot. Even one of the disappointing things about Hamer on Friday was that third goal. It's like, just take the fucker out. Just
that was
something.
Unlike him, though, wasn't it? I mean, it's not like he does that. He normally would sort that situation out himself, wouldn't he? Quite significantly. So that was an aberration, I think.
But the thing is, by that point, it was like both him and Sheaford, like the second goal, both him and Sheaford, like, to you, no, you do it. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that was by that point, and it's like, no, fucking nail it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about us being. It's like, we're not going to, as you said earlier, we're not going to be the best footballing side in the division, because we're not, because the teams have got good players. So you've got to match them in a different way, and it's got to be intensity. It's got to be sort of. You've got to want it. And on Friday, as I said, if we'd have been lost that, and I've seen us lose loads of times to hundreds of teams, and sometimes you're like, yeah, we were just beaten by the better side. Hands up, like, they were just better than us. And it's like, I accept Bournemouth were better than us. There's no argument with that. The question is, did we try and close that gap enough? That gap in quality by doing the other things we can do? And I don't think we did. Now, the question is, the next game against Brentford is a difficult one because they could be a Premiership side. We've got to close that gap now, because it's going to be a hard month, October, if we don't find a way of getting that front three to work. But also, if we don't play at higher intensity, if we don't close down those gaps and make it difficult. If you come out of October with like 2 clean sheets, you're going to get at least 2 points, but you might nick a goal. It's like, that's what we've got to be doing. We've got to be finding a way to do it. And the fact we rolled over quite as easy as we did was quite annoying for me. And that's what my issue is. Isn't the fact that we're beaten by a better team. That happens. It's the fact that we didn't we didn't make it more difficult. And that, so second and third goals are just quite disappointing. There's no ownership there out of that front five. And I think that's where my concern is going forward. It's how are we going to get that midfield and that striker unit up to Championship level? Because that's what's going to lose us games. And that's what's going to be the issue. And we've not got any money. Hopefully we're looking to bring in someone else. Do we change the system? Is it, this, neither Allen or Shipley have yet proven their Championship quality.
Allen's winding me up.
Do we persevere with them against Brentford, or do we go 2 up top?
I would like to hear Neil's voice. Neil, what would you do in the next game?
Well, I think we have a situation now because obviously Hammer has been sent off, so we're forced in that sense. I think we need to consider some change in attacking formation, because look, if we're going to stick with the fact that we've got a 5-man defence, that's how we play. You've then got to somehow work out how we can transition and at least become some sort of a threat. If you can retain that kind of sturdiness at the back, how do you do the other stuff moving forward? I think Godden by himself with someone behind him only works if you are the attacking team with impetus and you use Giles and Dabo and you've got people pushing on. And like we did against QPR, where it felt like there was an attacking unit and an attacking system, where those 2 wing-backs are either tentative or just pushed back because of the other team, it looks like a whole different system. So I think, we don't have one size fits all for this season. This formation isn't going to work against every single team. And I think that more than last season, actually significantly more than last season, we're going to have a sort of a horses for courses approach, because we're playing very, very different teams and disparate amount of quality between all of these teams. They've got different qualities and different ways of winning games. And we're going to have to be flexible in how we deal with that. I think of all the things that Paul spoke about, and I'm not so much concerned about the effort, but I am certainly concerned about kind of the decision making and just the willingness to kind of impose themselves on the match, and whether that's confidence or whether that's just still trying to come to terms with the league itself, I don't know, but I think that was noticeable the other day. And I just mentioned Alan there. I think Alan is kind of symptomatic of the fact that if it's working for you, Alan, O'Hare, and Godden seems all right, but and that has to be a very certain, a very specific set of circumstances for that kind of three to work. For Alan to come on and to replace Shipley, who had a fairly poor first half, and there's a reason why he was pulled off. Clive said that, and for Alan to come on and do literally maybe less than Shipley was really poor. I thought I was disappointed, and to be honest, I've been disappointed with Alan all season long. I don't quite know where he fits in, but I don't think he fits in where you desperately need some presence in an attacking area. I don't know if he can fit into that kind of formation. I just think if you've got Godden, O'Hare, the third person to me doesn't seem to be an Alan kind of player. You need somebody who's going to at least impose themselves in that attacking third. So we've got some thinking to do. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a single fix and say, well, we do this and it's going to be all right. But I think my concern is probably personnel, and maybe because I just don't know those options that we've got up there at the moment. Like Walker, I don't know who he is. Sheaf isn't really set me going in terms of who I think he is as a player. So there's a load of things to consider, but I don't have the answer. But I think some sort of change in dynamic attacking wise is probably the way I'd go.
And I think the problem is that, so I completely agree with you both to a certain extent, but specifically with you, Neil, is I think that considering that I think Alan played about 15 games last season. Is that to underestimate the number of games that he played?
Seems about right, doesn't it?
I want to say it was 13, but I could easily be wrong. He's exactly what I want. So every time I saw him last season, I really loved him. Really unfussy, almost a bit Jim O'Brien-y, where kind of dynamic and about output, where you felt like he was going to be involved in a goal as opposed to involved in the play. A little bit like, although a very different type of player, a little bit like Frank Musa, where you could see him going missing, but you could also then see him being involved very directly in a goal every single game, whether it be an assist or a goal. This season, I see nothing at all.
No.
Like a real vortex of lack of presence. And I feel that's really, we try as hard as possible not to be overly critical, I think, of players and try and be as fair as possible. And I think we've got to mitigate it with, again, what impact is the weird pre-season having on him that he might be able to build up to. Sometimes players like this you find have got niggling injuries that you don't know about. So this is obviously it's with the caveat of there may be something behind it, but it's unusual, I would say, for a player to have been so uninvolved in the games that they've been involved in so far this season as Alan has. And as much as everyone, I think, loves him, although everyone, not Ed Wilson, obviously, is again, I think, Shipley just. We talked obviously a lot about who would be able to make the step up and who not, and everyone wants him to be a tremendous force this season. But I do think they seem to be the two players, and possibly McFadzean, although he's had a good couple of games recently, where you wonder, actually, might be tricky for them. With McFadzean, is that you can see a way of him persevering, and in a three-man back line, you think there's enough cover there that might be okay, and he brings enough experience and value that it's okay. The worry for me is that we've got O'Hare, who seems such a bright light, Godden, who I think, in a really eloquent way, Paul, you put, it's not his fault that he doesn't contribute. He's not Didier Drogba up front on his own, is he? And nor do we want. Well, we probably do want him to be. We don't expect him to be Didier Drogba, do we? That's not who he's ever been. So that's not his fault. The question is, in a game like on Friday, can you afford to have on the pitch at the same time two players who can at times contribute so little to the overall attacking play? except for possibly being on the end of something? The answer to that is very unanimously no, isn't it?
I mean,
I think
Alan's biggest problem is he's basically just a poor version of O'Hare, isn't he?
No, because I think O'Hare is so much more active in the defensive side of play. So I think he's
they're trying to do the same. What I'm saying is, neither of them are ball playing behind the striker type players, are they? They're not. Trying to think of a good example, but they're not your sort of Tarquista type players. They're players who want to move the ball quickly. They want to get on the ball and run with it. They want to be doing things, which I know sounds odd.
No,
obviously
you're absolutely
everyone
right.
wants it, but it's sometimes what you need is someone who's just going to put their foot on the ball. But I do think one of the issues that Shipley and Allen are having is the fact that last season they were getting the ball higher up the pitch. They're actually already broken the midfield line of the opposition. This season, they're still with the opposition's midfield. So last season, they were getting the balls into spaces where they could actually turn and move, and they had a bit of time. This season, I think they're just getting it 10 yards further back, or they're getting it in the same sort of area as the opposing midfield. So I don't have the luxury of sort of time and
I agree with you. I agree with you to an extent. I just disagree with you in the second half of the first half against Bournemouth, where I felt that was the one period of the game where I felt had we had more attacking presence, whichever way you want to put that, I think we could have done more in that section of the game, and I think we were lacking that extra either ability or bodies or presence, however you want to put it. And I think there was, and I think possibly quality as well, which I think is the problem. And I think I know I'm going to cut you off here slightly, Paul, but I think part of the problem for you, Neil, in terms of saying this is what I would do next week, is there isn't someone waiting in the wings with an immediate surfeit of quality above what we're talking about. And I think one way or the other, we're going to be changing like for like, unless we're banking on Tyler Walker being a cut above, and that somehow we'll be able to benefit out of two up top. We haven't really talked about that massively, but Paul, how close are you to going to up top, and what would the benefits or the pros and cons be?
Well, Omar S1108S on Twitter says, "Is it time to change to 5-3-2 with O'Hare behind Walker and Godden?" It's purely the fact that to give Godden some mitigation, he was against three decent Bournemouth centre backs. So if the ball went long, even if he wins the header, he ain't getting the second ball. So I think I would always go two up top. I think, having watched football for long enough now, I just see the benefit of being able to put the opposing centre halves under pressure. So you make their lives more difficult. And as Bournemouth and by the sounds of it, Barnsley both did against us in the last two games, is if you make defenders make mistakes, you're closer to their goal when you're going to score. And I know that's all a bit sort of Wimbledon in the 80s and what's his name, the guy at Cambridge.
Charles Reap?
No, what's the guy at Beck at Cambridge who's basically
John Beck.
Yeah, get the ball near the box, and I'm not sort of advocating Route 1 football. What I'm advocating is the fact that you've got two players up front, then you have an outlet. So if Walker does win a flick on, then Godden might be near him to pick it up and actually build attacks from. I agree. I think Shipley and Allen are looking out of place. The most obvious solution then is to bring Walker up front. As discussed previously, I know Robbins, from what we've seen, isn't a massive fan of going to up front. It took him fucking ages in the League Two season, and even then, he still pretended that Biami was playing as a number 10 and not up front alongside Dundee United's latest signing. In reality, they played two up front. I would like to see two up front because I don't see how we're going to get the ball high up the pitch that we need to. And I also think we can't survive with Godden just on his own. It must be dispiriting being Godden up front on your own, because as Neil said earlier, you're waiting for the Hail Mary pass. You're just waiting for that one super pass, and you're gambling on it all the time, and knowing Godden is going to be offside for it. So, yeah, for me, I don't think it's a case of I wouldn't change Godden for Walker and keep O'Hare, keep Allen or Shipley in. I think you might as well keep Godden in. He's scoring goals. Can we get better use out of him and something better for the team? Unless, of course, we're going to sign an absolutely amazing number 10, but I can't see that happening either.
Well, this is my question to Neil is actually, if you don't go 2 up top, do you bring in Gibello or Hilsner, who we're definitely going to see play a lot this season by the looks of it?
Oh God! The funny thing is with all this is like I'm almost not looking at individuals. Like, so Godden can be scoring the goals, and laws of football say, well, he's scoring the goals, so you got to play him. And you know, it's. I think we've got to be really kind of ruthless and selfless about what can we do. Like, what's a sustainable model for us this year? And you know, I always got heart back to Ben Stevenson when he played for us, who individually looked great, played really well, and yet somehow it just didn't fit the team, or it didn't really benefit the team. Him playing well, but nothing else didn't click around him. And we may have to make that call with Godden in the sense where maybe him up front, it might not be taking him out of the team, but you know, we have to support him up front, or give him someone else, or changing the shape around him, or maybe him up front by himself, and Walker might be a better option up front by himself. And that's a really harsh call when you've got Godden scoring all the goals. And I would love to have caveated all of this talk beforehand, saying Godden, who's been playing, you know, scoring goals, and fair play to him. But you know, I want to stay up this season, and I think we need to come up with something that's going to work for us. And I think we're gradually coming to the conclusion that what specifically worked for us last season probably isn't going to work for us every single game this year. So we do need some options. And you know, like you said, Gibello's coming back. So where is he? Is he been playing sort of friendly games and stuff?
He's played 45 minutes in the under 23s, I think.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's you sort of hit the nail on the head. I think what people have got to get their heads around is what was our massive advantage last season, which is basically the fact we were good and lots of other teams were shit, isn't a massive step up this season. Last season we were the kings of fine margins, but we didn't make as many stupid mistakes as the opposition, and we took our limited number of chances more often than the opposition. That was basically the way we got promoted, wasn't it? We were absolutely machine-like. And this season, you need to be more than machine-like. You need to have that extra bit of quality, and especially in the attacking third. And to be fair, it's like, you know, the first goal against QPR was an extra bit of quality.
Yeah.
And the second goal against QPR was an extra bit of quality from O'Hare. So, you know, there is quality in there, but almost you're saying that they were the bits of quality, they happened to result in goals. We didn't really do anything other than that. And that's like, you know, we had a 100% success rate against QPR. We're not going to get 100% success rate against everyone else. I mean, someone on Twitter was asking about Walsh. I mean, would you go all out to try and get Walsh back?
It's probably a bit late now, isn't it? Do we need to get 100%
No,
success
you can still
rate
sign someone. We've got 2 weeks.
Do we very quickly? Well, so I think me and Neil are probably. What did you say, Neil?
Well, I genuinely think Haber is the same as Walsh. So
yeah,
I don't.
I'm not sure there's much function in this, or much utility in signing another defensive midfielder at this point. I would much rather see us, if we've got any budget left at all, is I would be going for, as insane as it is to have as many attacking midfielders on the books as we've already got. If we could somehow bring in someone on loan, possibly. I mean, I'm disappointed we didn't sign Wes Hoolahan. I keep seeing him doing well for Cambridge. I keep thinking, I reckon he might have been a decent shout for 20 minutes here and there. You know, someone like that who might not have the legs. Like when Paul Merson, I know this is an awful example again, but like Paul Merson go to Portsmouth. Not quite
That was
the
a
legs
great example. I like that. He dominated, didn't he?
Yeah, just kind of pointing every so often and scoring goals from range because he couldn't run anymore. That's the sort of thing I would like to see us sign. But yeah, I've actually forgotten your question there, Paul. What did you say?
I mean, I sort of see what you're saying.
Liam Walsh. Liam Walsh.
Hammer as the replacement for what? I get that, but also I don't see the issue of having Walsh alongside Hamer. I think Hamer could then be the replacement for Kelly, which is fine. I don't see why.
But he's ill-disciplined in every sense of the word, isn't he? So
He is.
He's not going
He
to
is.
not run forward. That's not. I think you need, and I think this is what I was hoping Sheaf would be a bit more of, albeit that he's got plenty of time to show it. Is a very metronomic kind of Roman Vincelo type player, literally just in the same place all the time, and it's the right place. Whereas, because I think Hamer is just going to be a nightmare, isn't he? Like a brilliant nightmare, completely uncontrollable, completely unpredictable, really, really effective. But you can't be like, okay, well, you sit back and it'll be like, oh, absolutely, I'll be right there if you need me.
I mean, I think I'll just check this. I think Sheaf's passing percentage against, he had 89% complete pass completion rate against Bournemouth.
It's not bad.
I mean, it isn't. I mean, that's great. But it's a bit
backwards.
like the old Stephen Hughes thing. If I pass the ball to the left back who's got 3 men around him, I get 100% pass completion rate.
I'd definitely do that if I was a footballer. That would be me.
Well,
Just give it to somebody. Like, look at my stats, guys. 99%. I am the Iniesta of the Midlands.
Yeah. I've never misplaced a pass. Yeah, but you've never passed the ball more than 5 yards. Yeah, but it's never been misplaced. And that's sort of to some extent the problem with all these stats, isn't it? They don't really tell you a picture. They tell you sort of snippets of information which you then take context out of. And it's like, Sheaf might just be that, but he's got to be. If
you only looked at stats, you'd assume that Amadou Bakayoko was basically offside all the time and didn't score any goals. You wouldn't see his real value, would you?
No, I mean it's like I think sort of one of you nailed it earlier about Sheaf is the fact that he doesn't seem that. I thought he was going to be like a David Batty, sort of stood in the right position, will kick someone every now and then, and be sort of impeccable on the ball. Now, 89% pass rate is impeccable on the ball. I can't remember him winning the tackle, and I can't remember really him blocking anything or being stood in the right position. Now, that's not to say he wasn't. It just felt like he got overrun. And if you're playing two defensive midfielders, they shouldn't be getting overrun. They should be at least getting booked, or at least sort of conceding fouls, or at least doing something to disrupt the flow of the Bournemouth team. And I don't think they did that. But, we've moved on from that. Questions, anything else? I can't be asked to ask that one because it doesn't really seem that relevant.
Is that that's the you did a really lovely segue before, Paul. I can't think what it was, and I didn't want to destroy it like you always try and destroy mine. That is where you're going. That's your intro into listener questions section, is it?
That definitely is. Steve Paderno, it's got to be Steve. Can we quantify the amount of people overreacting to a defeat to ex-Premier side Bournemouth? I've counted about 3, with about 2,000 people responding saying, get a grip. Obviously, we have issues to address, but I'm not sure we should be too critical at this point. Hopefully, we've covered that by being overly critical, but also me being slagged off for being overly critical.
Can I just check? Does Steve Paderno have any more questions?
No.
Okay.
He did respond, but I'm not reading his response now.
Yeah, I'm just interested to hear any Paul Knowles. Did he have any questions?
Lee asked, most concern for me was our passing. Remind me of watching England in the so-called golden generation, constantly unable to pass to another white shirt. There's just no let up in pressure if you can't keep the ball, which I think is fair enough. Then I had a discussion about when the transfer deadline is, which apparently is now the 16th of October for us from Premier League clubs. So if you want to get in a loan from one of the big boys, that's when you've got to do it by. Lee also asked,
if anyone's wondering why Paul is rushing so much at this point, but he's had a cottage pie in the oven that he's now ready.
It's fucking 20 past 10. We've been probably doing this for an hour. Everyone's hoping I rush through all this crap. Is Hamer's general vibe compatible with a specific kind of team spirit that we've had for the last two seasons? Or is he a bit too rogue?
Don't look at us, Paul. You've answered the last 10 questions yourself.
Fucking hell.
He's a bit mad though, isn't he? I mean, although this is very standard answer, but the guy whacked him first, or pushed him first. He whacked him back, and then he gets sent off for it, and the other guy's fine. I don't like injustice like that.
He should have just fallen over, shouldn't he? When that guy cleared him out the first time, he should have grabbed his face and gone to the floor.
I think.
Shazrad asks, do you think we need a strike to give Godden and Walker competition in the side would help in the remaining transfer window? Well, obviously, we've got competition for them because we've got Bakayoko. But it does come down to the fact if we do go 2 up top, then our only reserve strikers are Bakayoko and Biamu. And I said this at the start of the season, not one of those 4 really fills me with much confidence. So my answer is yes. I would sign him as a striker.
I watched Bakayoko's Walsall video the other day just to remind myself. I feel conned. I want that player. He looks good. He looks amazing. He's like a classy winger. He's doing all these back heels and flicks and I just cannot believe that's the same player. It's baffling to me. Everybody watch it.
I've got a young player called Alex Nimley. He might interest you.
I liked Nimley, didn't I? I thought he was great.
Joseph asks, is a formation change out the question? With 5-3-2, I think we've covered that one. And then he wants to know if we're going to discuss the meaty change in formation, which we sort of have.
This is basically just 50 people asking whether we're going to change formation. Sorry, go on, you say that again.
You put in a rather sad joke, which was morbidly funny.
Okay. I think we can move on from that. I don't think we need to...
I didn't ask.
Really. That's the end of our listener questions. My question to you two: after 4 games, is it 4? We've played 5. I can't remember. 4 games. Has your opinion on how the season's going to pan out changed, or are you sort of thinking, it is what it is? We're not quite as bad as we thought it might be, but we're also teams to the opposition are better than we thought they might be.
Neil?
Yeah, we're probably not going to win the league, are we? So, it has changed. I'm sensible now.
My favourite comment on Twitter was the person who slagged me off of being like, of course Bournemouth are going to beat us. We should be comparing to Bournemouth. And then the next breath went, yeah, but we could be we should be aiming for the playoffs. It's like, well, do you think Bournemouth are like that much better than everyone else, that the team that's going to be 7th, which would mean they finish below us, are so much shitter than we are? It's like, there are about 6 or 7 teams who are probably thinking they're as good as Bournemouth. And then there's another batch of teams who are aspirational to be as good as Bournemouth. It's like, we've got to pin ourselves on 21st and then be happy if we're far higher than that.
See, I don't know what we can do this year. Like, I'm not saying we're going to do anything, but I still don't know who we are and what we can do and whether we're going to get relegated or whether we're going to mid-table or anything like that. We're still figuring it all out. But I think, we have to be realistic that, like you say, there's steps we need to. There's steps we need to work our way through. We have to settle ourselves as a team in this league first before you can start looking at anything other than just settling yourself as a team. And so even me, like the perennial optimist, the guy who's always saying we should always aim, to get promoted. We just don't know this. And Joey mentioned earlier about just all of the other circumstances that have impacted stuff, and the fact that everybody's playing behind closed doors and all these other levelers. It's strange. We're still having to work everything out, and I don't dismiss the idea that we could suddenly click and become, a fairly decent championship team, and that's something that could happen. And the fact that we're supposed to have a little bit of confidence, and I reckon all things being normal, if the season has just worked, and we won the league properly, and we'd started again this season, we probably may have maintained some of that momentum, and things could have been a little bit more different. But right now, I think. I'm more than ever. I just cannot even predict what may happen, just because we are still all trying to work this thing out. Because it's just game by game, things feel different. That second half against QPR, we were good. We looked classy. Our wingers were working, and you're like, okay, if we can play like that, we can beat most teams. And then you see us play against Bournemouth, and you're like, okay, well, this is pretty shit, isn't it? And I think we do need to give ourselves a bit more time, but I at least say I don't think we're going to win the league. That's my long way of getting around to that answer.
Can I unequivocally agree with all of that and throw in one more variable that I don't think has been touched on so far? Is actually, I keep saying to myself, effectively, staying up would be a good result, but also Sheffield Wednesday have got a significant points deduction, and think generally speaking, we'll probably find it quite difficult with this season. We've also got Wycombe, who are on course to lose every single game that they play.
Yeah, true.
And I don't mean that gleefully. I just think it's one of them unfortunate things where they're just way out of their depth, like way out of their depth. They were incredible to get promoted last season, but it's so we may in fact, assuming that Sheffield Wednesday don't pick up, be battling for one relegation spot. And I think even as optimistic as all of us would be, we'd probably all take being safe now, wouldn't we?
Right now, yeah.
But
Just
not Paul. Paul thinks we should be finishing fucking third by the sounds of it.
No, I think we should be finishing 23rd. I think that's desperately. I mean, people talking about.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how expensive Norwich's team is, but they're on the same amount of points as we are.
They are, and that was the other thing I was going to come on to say is that the other thing in terms of where we will finish is: did anyone expect Nottingham Forest to be on no points at this point of the season?
I had no idea what to expect from Nottingham Forest at all because I haven't paid any attention to Nottingham Forest for about. When did Brian Clough leave?
God,
93.
That's where my interest in Notts Forest ended.
But equally,
Ian Wone.
Did anyone expect Luton to be fifth? Bristol City are currently top.
Yeah, I mean, if you're right. It's 4 games in. I mean, you look at we're on the same amount of points as Brentford, Norwich, Huddersfield, Derby, Barnsley, or 1 point ahead of Derby. But as you say, it's sort of, I think
the Championship is fucking mental. Like it
is
a really strange league, isn't it?
I wouldn't write Wycombe off just yet. I'm not to say I think they're going to survive. I just think.
Have they scored yet?
No, they've conceded 10 in their 4 games.
Legend.
But again, it's one of those. I don't know who they play. They could have played. The teams are all sit in the top 6. They could have just been very unlucky with their opening fixtures, couldn't they? I mean, it could be the fact they're shit. I mean,
10 lucky breakaways.
But I don't know. I'm having a look now. They played
brilliant radio as usual here.
Yeah,
we're gonna.
They played Swansea, Luton, Blackburn, and Rotherham.
That's 4 games.
They've played teams that are in the top half of the table.
Yeah, I mean it's what I would call a mixed bag.
I can't remember what they've said now. Well, they played 4th, 5th, and 6th, and 11th.
Yeah.
Now, granted, they could be 4th, 5th, and 6th because they've all played Wycombe.
Yeah, I'd go with that. I reckon. Yeah, let's
like Bristol City and Bournemouth are first and third because they have got a win each off both.
They've played us, yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. More from Insight Hour next week. I'll tell you what I would like to see brought forward because we have a general reticence to answering questions from listeners anyway. For all future podcasts that you're on, Paul, is that you conduct the listener questions much way in the same way as you did today, where you just sort of skim through them and answer them roughly yourself. And then that's
two bits of note. It's transfer deadline day. Some Cov fans have obviously decided that Jack Wiltshire is going to cut his £1 billion a week wages and come to play for Cov. I mean, that's an obvious one. But also, Neil's friend Bright had his contract terminated at AEK Athens.
Then he just joined them. What's going on?
June.
God, he's a menace, isn't he, that guy? What's he playing now?
As we've sort of, we're not going to go into the full details, but I think we've alluded to it in the past. I used to know the guy that lived next door to him while he was at Wigan, and I am not surprised in the slightest.
Okay. Say no more.
Yeah, there we go. So, whenever it was like, it's a shame we can't get him back when he left Wigan, I was like, I think it's probably for the best.
Remember the good times. Just remember the goal at Atkinson.
The Sunderland performance, the entire second half of the season, all of the great stories that Jack Grimmer and Tom Davis told us about. Let's let them be what happened. Right, there we go. Okay. Anything that anyone wants to finish up with? Anything that anyone's got a plug, or we've got no time to do anything anymore.
No.
Okay. Right. You know where to listen to us because you listen to us now. Sidewayssammy.club.
I think he might just be co.uk now, isn't it? He's
moved up in the world.
Yeah, okay. But either way, if you Google Sideways Sammy, it's there, and he's at Side Sammy on Twitter.
.com. God, he's really gone up. It's international. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. And of course, the Lonely Season .club, which is inexplicably still going forward, despite its entire inception reason being completely removed by the inability to go to games.
What are you looking that for? I'm joking, Lauren.
Yeah, so go and have a look at those because those are still in rotation. I think that's everything, isn't it?
I reckon so. Yeah.
Perfect. Right. Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
And thank you, listener. Bye-bye. Bye.